Alright, now let's make our project interactive. We've talked about the repeat blocks and the forever blocks. Now we're going to move on to the if-then blocks and the if-then-else blocks. These blocks are going to make up the majority of your code because it's how the computer makes decisions in Scratch. To start, we're going to put in a block for forever that repeats what we're doing over and over and over again. And we're going to check to see if the person using our project is pressing the left key on the keyboard or the right key on the keyboard. To do that, we're going to use these if blocks. If something is happening, then do these steps. Or, if something is happening, do these steps. Otherwise, or else, do something else. Okay? So, we need to be able to find out whether or not the person using our project is pressing the left key or the right key on the keyboard. And to do that, we're going to introduce another set of blocks, the sensing blocks. The sensing blocks are specially shaped. You'll notice that they're in kind of a diamond shape, the same shape that has a little spot in our if-then blocks. What that means is that these blocks can go inside of these little diamond shapes on our if-then blocks to decide whether or not something is happening. In this case, we can look at whether or not the mouse pointer is touching Scratch the Cat, whether Scratch the Cat is touching a specific color, whether a color is touching another color, or, in our case, whether or not a specific key is being pressed on the keyboard. So what we're going to do is go into our control blocks and grab an if blank then block, put it into our project, and then go into the sensing blocks and choose the key for the left arrow on our keyboard. So what that means is we're going to be checking forever, over and over and over again, whether or not the left key or the left arrow key is being pressed on the keyboard. If it is, we're going to do some steps. In this case, we should probably make Scratch the Cat point to the left and then move 10 steps. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that if we run our game and press the left arrow key on the keyboard, Scratch the Cat turns upside down. This isn't ideal. We probably just want him to face to the left rather than turning upside down, and we can change that. First, I'm going to stop our project, and then I'm going to click on the little letter I that shows up next to Scratch the Cat. This is the information about our sprite. And if you click that, you'll see the information about Scratch the Cat, including the direction he's currently facing, the style of rotation, which is how Scratch the Cat turns, and whether or not we can drag Scratch the Cat and show him. We're going to change our rotation style to the second option so that Scratch the Cat just flips left and right rather than turning in a circle. If we hit the back arrow now and start our script again, using the green flag, Scratch the Cat will start off in the right direction and simply turn in the direction. We can use the exact same steps we used for our first block to make the right arrow key work on our keyboard too. Now, we can probably go into our control blocks and repeat that over and do the exact same steps, but it might be easier to just duplicate what we've already done. Duplicating is easy. You can right-click on a set of blocks and just hit duplicate to get an exact copy of those blocks. The only difference here is that we want to change the key being pressed. Instead of the left arrow, we want the right arrow. So now we have a left arrow block and a right arrow block. And then we need to change the direction that Scratch the Cat is facing. In this case, we want him to face to the right instead of to the left, so that when we press the right arrow key, he moves to the right. Now if we press the green flag again, our game will reset, Scratch will move to the middle, and now we can move to the left by pressing the left arrow key, and to the right by pressing the right arrow key. See if you can figure out how to get the up and down keys to move so that when we press the up arrow, Scratch moves up, and we press the down arrow, Scratch moves down. If you're following along, it should be pretty easy to make the changes to make Scratch move up and down. We're going to do the same thing we did for these blocks by duplicating them, and then just changing the direction that Scratch moves and the arrow key that's pressed. We'll duplicate one more time for the down arrow key and make sure that we point Scratch down. Now if we press the green flag, Scratch should be able to move up, down, left, and right, depending on what key we press on the keyboard. Our next step for this project is to give Scratch the Cat something to do. So we're going to add a little mouse that randomly appears on the screen that Scratch the Cat is going to need to catch. In order to do that, we need to create a new object, a mouse, that is going to randomly pop up on the screen. So let's start by clicking the New Sprite button, which allows us to choose a new object or sprite from the Scratch library. We're going to scroll down until we get to the mouse, and we'll add that into our project. Now, just like we did with Scratch the Cat, we're going to start by adding a when flag clicked block so that we can control what it does while the project is going on. We'll start by setting the size of the mouse first and setting its position when we start the game. So the first step is to go to the looks blocks and set the size to something like 50%. Next, we're going to go to the motion blocks, and we're going to use this block here that says Go To with a drop down. Right now it's set to mouse pointer, but we can change that drop down to make the mouse go to a random position. So let's do that. Now when we click the green flag on our game, the mouse will move to a random spot on the stage, and it sets its size to 50%. Next, let's write the recipe so that when Scratch the Cat catches the mouse, when we move him using the arrow keys, he eats the mouse and the mouse disappears. We'll do that by using another forever loop. This basically checks to see over and over and over again if Scratch the Cat is touching the mouse. And we kind of already know how to do that. So let's use our sensing blocks and our if-then blocks to put that together. We'll first take an if block and drag it into our forever loop. This means that we're constantly checking whether or not Scratch has caught the mouse. Then we'll go into our sensing blocks and see, is the mouse touching Scratch the Cat? We'll change the drop down to Sprite 1, since that's Scratch's sprite, and we'll drag that jewel or diamond shape into the block for the if-then loop. Next, we need to decide what happens when that mouse is caught. So we'll start off by hiding the mouse first, using the hide block that we talked about in the look section. Now, if we click the green flag and Scratch catches the mouse hides. But it doesn't do much more than that. So let's cause the mouse to move to a different position using the random position block that we chose. So now we've got two, one to start the first position, and now one to randomly change the position whenever Scratch the Cat touches the mouse. Then we'll add a wait block so that we wait for 1 second just to give a little bit of a delay, and then we'll use the show block to pop the mouse back up again. Now we need to add a show block at the beginning so that the mouse shows up right when we start the game, just in case we've hidden it before. And now when we click the green flag, the mouse will show up, and when we catch it, it'll disappear and then move to a different part of the level. Now this isn't much of a project. We should probably be keeping track of how many times we catch the mouse, and maybe even a high score of how many times we've caught the mouse the most. That's pretty easy to do, but in order to do that, we need to look at the next type of block, which is a data block. Data blocks are specifically for keeping track of things in our project. In this case, a score and a high score. In order to make a score, we need to create something called a variable. A variable is just a bucket where we can save some kind of information and then change it later. So let's click on Make a Variable and type in current score for the name. All this is going to do is make a blank block that's kind of circular in shape that keeps track of what our current score is. We still need to tell that block how to keep track of the score, but this is the spot where it's going to keep track of it. It's like a bucket for numbers. So, how do we actually do that? Well, first, we need to click back on Scratch the Cat. Right now, we still have the mouse highlighted, which means we're looking at all the recipes or code blocks for the mouse. So in order to get back to Scratch's recipes or his code blocks, we need to click back on him so that he's highlighted. Now, we're going to go back into our control blocks and add another if block that says, just like we did for the mouse, if Scratch the Cat is touching the mouse, in this case, mouse 1, which we can tell by the name down here, then in our data blocks, we want to change the current score by 1. You can also put negative numbers down here if you want to put something in there that decreases the number that's saved in our variable. For right now, we just want to increase the score every time we catch a mouse. So if Scratch is touching the mouse, then we change the current score by 1. Now, one of the things that we'll need to do when our game starts, and you'll see this as we start to play, is that our current score definitely goes up, but when we stop and restart our game, it doesn't reset back to 0. It stays at whatever the last number was. So we'll need to set it up so that our current score gets reset to 0 each time. And to do that, we're going to add a recipe or a script on our level itself. Now we could do this on Scratch the Cat also, but I want to show you that you can also do code and write recipes for the level. This is really helpful if you want to set up things that reset at the beginning of the level every single time. So let's take a when green flag clicked, and then just go right into our data block and set the current score to 0. That means that when we click that green flag, our current score sets to 0 every single time we start. If we click the green flag, we should be able to move Scratch. Our current score was reset to 0. And now each time we catch a mouse, our current score goes up. But when we click the green flag again, it resets back to 0. So the entire project resets back to 0, Scratch goes back in the middle, and the mouse appears at a random spot again. Now, let's set up our high score. In the same area, we know that our current score is whatever we're currently playing in the game. But we also need to set up a variable or another bucket separate from our current score that keeps track of whatever that high score was. So let's make a variable and just type in high score. The high score variable is where we're going to store whatever the highest score we've gotten. So how do we know what the highest score we've gotten is? Well, we need to check. We need to check to see if our current score is greater than our high score. How do we do that? Well, under our control blocks, we're going to be checking this over and over and over again. So just like with Scratch the Cat and the Mouse, we're going to use a forever block. And the forever block is just constantly going to check if something is happening. In this case, we want to check to see if current score is greater than high score. And to do that, we're going to introduce another set of blocks, our operator blocks. Our operator blocks let us use math to determine if certain things are happening in our game. So let's set up our control block for an if-then, which is basically going to say if the current score is higher than our current high score, then set the high score to whatever the score is right now. And to do that, we need to use an operator block. The operator block we want to use is this third block in this section in the middle. We've got some blocks also to do math, like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. We've also got a block that randomly can pick a number between a set of numbers, and then we've got blocks that can compare if something is less than, equal to, or greater than. In this case, we're going to be comparing if something is greater than something else. In this case, if our current score is greater than our high score. And in order to actually make that comparison, all we have to do is drag those variables from the data section. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab the current score and check if the current score is greater than the high score. If it is, then we need to do something. And in this case, what we need to do is set the high score to a number. But what number? Well, we could manually do that and try and figure out every single time, but we're already keeping track of what the current score is. So, if the current score is greater than the high score, set the high score to the current score. All we need to do is just drag current score into that second block. And now, if we play the game, you'll see that our current score and our high score are both updating at the same time. If we hit the green flag to reset our game or our project, because we've only reset the current score to 0 at the beginning of our stage, our high score stays, and it doesn't change again until our current score beats our high score. So now we've set up variables to keep track of the current score and the high score, and we've also used operators to check to see if one number is bigger than another number or greater than another number. See if you can use some of these other operators to add other functionality into this game. Maybe we want to put in a bad mouse or a bad piece of cheese that takes away a point from the current score anytime the player catches it on accident. Going forward, we're going to introduce our exercises that you can work on. You'll use a lot of these operators and even some variables to create those exercises and do those projects. Lastly, there's always help. If you look at the right-hand side of the screen, there's a little question mark button in the top right-hand corner that shows you everything that all of the blocks do in each of the different sections. Feel free to click through these and see exactly what the blocks do. They're set up so that when you click on a sprite, you'll see the same blocks here that are here. Click on the block that you're curious about and it'll show you exactly how to use that. You've also got your mentors available for help, so feel free to raise your hand or ask questions if you get stuck at any point. It's okay to ask for help and even work with your team members to finish a project or an exercise. Most of all though, experiment. Play around with all the different blocks, including some of the ones that we haven't talked about, and see if you can get some creative ways to finish these projects.